We have an opportunity to get involved right away. With the straddle on to 25, I raise to 75 from the cutoff with pocket queens. The crow's in the big blind, he makes the call. The under the gun straddler has a hand that he thinks could be best. He 3-bets a 280. Getting this all in pre-flop seems appealing. We won't want to see an overcard come out, but I go with a smaller sizing as I 4-bet to 600. The crow folds quickly. The biggest elf I've ever seen declines his option to 5-bet jam, so I figure we have him beat. He calls for 320 more to play a heads-up pot. The flop comes Jack 7-5 with 2 clubs. We've got an overpair and a backdoor flush draw. The opponent checks. The most likely hands that I put him on are Jacks, 10s, and Ace-King. Jacks has us beat. Ace-King and pocket 10s won't want to call large bets. I go with a bet of 400. I'll jam on most turns. 1/3 pot is an effective sizing. Ace-King with no club will have a tough time playing future streets from out of position. The opponent folds. Right away, we win a pot to be up several hundred and have the largest stack at the table. Almost an orbit later, we've got Ace-5 suited on the button with a double straddle to 50 on. We raise to 160. Luigi's in the small blind with a hand that has us dominated. He 3-bets to 650, committing just over a quarter of his stack. In these button versus small blind situations, our opponent is going to have a lot of hands he's okay 3-betting, but won't love calling off his stack for. There's a new sheriff in town, and he 4-bet rips it. There's no immediate decision from the opponent. The young plumber looks a little backed up. He was hoping to win at pre-flop, now has a hand that he can only bluff catch with. It's not worth the risk. He folds. We get our bluff through to be up over 1,000, less than 10 hands into the session. While an interview is being conducted, a big hand is developing that you'll see in the bottom left part of the screen. The triple straddle to 100 is on. Gazzy Phil raises to 250 from the button. Try not to be distracted by Robin's package. We 3-bet to 1100 from the small blind with pocket 9s. You may notice that there are some red circles next to everyone's name. That's because we just started a round of the Nick game, which is going to create a lot more action than normal. I've also got a couple thousand more in my stack after adding on 3,000 earlier. As alluded to previously, button versus small blind situations are going to induce lots of lighter 3 and 4 betting. Holy 4-bet, Gazzy Phil jams for essentially just over 36 times the triple straddle amount. I snap call. We see that it's basically a flip, but an ace and a queen have already been folded pre-flop, so we're in decent shape. We're only running at one time for a $7,500 pot. The flop comes ace-8 deuce rainbow. It's looking bleak as our chance of winning is reduced to 9%. The turn is the jack of hearts. It's no help. We need to hit 1 and 2 remaining 9s, or we'll have to add on once again. The river is the 7 of spades, wrapping up the victory for Gazzy Phil. He gets me good. While it's frustrating to lose, I'm not going to burn the place to the ground or anything. I got it in as a slight favorite, and unfortunately didn't get an ideal run out. I add on for 4,000 more. I'm in for 9,000 total. Currently, I'm in the hole for 4,000, but that's not an insurmountable number. I'm not panicking just yet, even though it feels like Sid just took out the magnifying glass. Next, we've got King Jack offsuit on the button with a double straddle on. I raise to 125. The small blind has a hand that should normally be a 3-bet, but we already 4-bet jammed on him earlier in a button versus small blind situation, causing him to have to fold the best hand. We also 4-bet jammed pocket 7s that we just showed, so 3-betting me probably isn't too appealing. The small blind just calls. The elf defends his double straddle as we go 3 ways to the flop in position. It comes 10-7 deuce with 2 spades. We only have 2 overs and some backdoor draws. Checks to us. Let's try to take this one down without risking much. I bet 125. It's a quarter of the pot. If we get called, we can fire on plenty of turns if we pick up equity. Top pair isn't folding at this juncture. The small blind calls. The double straddler, who's cousins with the Keeblers, folds. It's down to heads up. The turn is the king of hearts, giving us top pair and a commanding lead. The small blind checks. Broadway cards are always going to be better for our range as the pre-flop aggressor, whether we actually connect or just pick up a straight draw with a hand like ace-queen or queen-jack. I'd continue firing with some of those straight or flush draw combos, so I need to do it when I actually have hands as well. I bet 450 for value. If we're up against 2-pair better, we'll find out right now because we'll be getting check raised. Instead, the small blind just calls, indicating that our top pair is very likely best. The river is the 3 of diamonds. It's a total brick. Every single draw misses. The small blind checks. There's still a slight chance that we're losing to king queen of spades or clubs, but Star Command gives us permission to blast off. I bet 1100. It's a fairly large sizing that might look like a bluff, especially because normally if I'm betting on 3 streets, I'll have 2-pair or better a good percentage of the time, or I'll be bluffing. It's hard to have two pair, particularly from my opponent's perspective, when he has removal to two pair combos. The flush and straight draws missing should make it even more enticing for the small blind to call with second pair. Ultimately, he makes the correct fold and avoids losing a substantial amount. We win a medium-sized pot, but I'm still stuck several thousand that I'll need to get back before Andy realizes it's gone. Another round of the nit game is on, though we've already won a hand and we've gotten rid of our nit button. Two players limp in for 50 before Gazzy Phil wakes up with a real pair. He raises to 300 from the small blind. Our jiggities have Gazzy notched. We don't want to call and have multiple players behind us call. I 3-bet to 1,000. I've been ultra aggressive pre-flop. In fact, this is the second hand in a row that I've 3-bet. Luigi has one of the shortest stacks of the table in the straddle with what's essentially 50 big blinds in front of him. He's tired of my shenanigans. He knows that I can't always have it. He 4-bet rips it with pocket nines, picking a bad time to do it, but he was kind of handcuffed with no great options. Folds back to Gazzy, who has an interesting decision with his high pocket pair. Given the table dynamics, Gazzy could justifiably call or raise, thinking that I've been 3-betting in a high frequency, which could have caused the straddler to 4-bet with a way worse hand than tens, especially since the straddler still has his nit button. Under the gun actually cold 4-bet with a worse hand than Gazzy, but Gazzy knows he also needs to be worried about me having him beat. Gazzy only has $300 invested and doesn't need to risk a substantial amount more when he could be crushed. He verbally makes the correct fold. I go for a yellow chip to call, not knowing if we've got the lead, we're flipping, or we're crushed. I'm relieved to see that we're a big favorite, though runouts at the lodge aren't always kind to me. The flop comes Queen 4 Deuce Rainbow. We keep the lead for the time being. The turn is the 7 of hearts, bringing us one step closer to winning a pot of almost 5,500. The river is the 8 of hearts. It looks a little too close to a 9 than I would have preferred, but we win a big all-in pot to get almost all the way out of the hole that we were in. Our stack climbs to about 9,000. It's enough to cause the other opponents a lot of trouble. We double straddle to 50 in this hand. The crow, who has the scariest costume at the table, raises to 125. Wonder Elf makes the light call on the button. We've got pocket tens. 3-betting or calling are both reasonable options. I call to close the action. We're going 3 ways to the flop. It comes Jack 7-4 Rainbow. We've got second pair and a backdoor straight draw. I check. The crow puts out a small bet of 125. Wonder Elf doesn't connect well. He folds. After under-repping our hand pre-flop, I won't be in any hurry to fold, definitely not to a small flop bet, even though it's tricky to play out of position with second pair against a good player when we're unlikely to improve. I call with plans to potentially rep a straight if a 9 or 8 comes on future streets. The turn is the 5 of clubs. 8-6 and 6-3 improve to a straight. I check. This will generally be a decent turn for my double straddle defend range, so I don't anticipate too many bluffs from the opponent in this situation. He isn't concerned about us though. He goes with a bigger sizing of 550. I'm surprised to see this bet because I could definitely have straights, sets, and 2-pair combinations, so this is either a value bet with a strong hand like an overpair or better, or it's a very ambitious bluff. I take the money I saved from not 3-betting pre-flop, and I call, still having intentions to potentially rep a straight if an opportunity comes. The river is the 9 of hearts, putting a third straight possibility on board, which we double block. The crow's chances of winning this at showdown are dead, but he's been known to come back from the dead before. I check. He puts out an enormous overbet at 3,000. It's almost 2 times the size of the pot. There are multiple things running through my mind right now. First, and maybe most important, is that I really hope Andy doesn't come home early. Next is that 10-8 is the nuts, which we have insane removal for. There's very little chance that our opponent has that, but he bet large on the turn and massive on the river. He could be doing this with an overpair if he puts me on a jack and he's trying to get max value, since I've only check called twice, making it seem like I've got a 1-pair type of hand. The opponent could also be doing this with a set, 2-pair, or potentially a straight. In the rare instances, he really does have 10-8 or 8-6. Can we credibly rep the highest straight? Well, I definitely play 10-8 the same way, and I'll have every single combo of that in my range, including the offsuit ones. Remember, 10-8 is a double gutter on the turn that gets there on the river, so I still would have called a sizable turn bet. I might have played 8-6 the same way as well because there were no flush draws to be worried about on the turn, so check calling a big bet rather than check raising is still reasonable on that street. I'm not sure if we're ahead or behind, but a check shove will look insanely strong after seeing a $3,000 overbet, especially because a jam is only for about $5,000 more. If the opponent is bluffing, we're beating him anyway, so shoving can only help us. If the opponent has anything other than a straight that he's betting for value, his overpairs, 2-pair combos, and sets will be reduced to bluff catchers. This isn't a fun spot for me to be in. but I'm not giving up.
Big time overbet.
Stream here once. It was his first time.
All in.
Yeah. He did the street therapy. He was doing
Back at you, says Brad Owen. Woody Owen. And Woody Owen loves the snap call.
Yeah, nice play there from Woody Owen. Shows double blocking the 8-10s of the world.
I guess.
It is the best hand.
Oh, that's not fold.
Did you get a Woody when he folded? I've been sitting on that all day.
There you go. Hell yeah.
Phil and his old jokes.
Gazzy Phil.
Let's go.
Bump.
Although we had the best hand, it's still hard to find the courage to pull the trigger rather than take the safe way out and fold, which is much easier to justify. I thought shoving instead of calling would be much more likely to win a huge pot for us. It works out, allowing us to win several thousand to be at the top of the leaderboard for the moment.